Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples, checking in with our last lecture in this series, finishing up on our origins of sociology. And today we're going to meet three more thinkers. These are American sociologists. Now, they're not necessarily the earliest thinkers, but there are three important sociological American thinkers that'll influence the things that we'll talk about for the rest of the semester. Now, the first one is George Herbert Mead. Psychology majors, you may be saying, that name, it sounds familiar. I feel like maybe I read some of his stuff about the construction of the self. Yeah, you may have. In fact, he would be a social psychologist today. He's exciting to us because he founds this entire field called symbolic interactionism, which tries to understand how we learn what is normal and expected of us by interacting with other people on a daily basis, whether that's interacting with our families, our friends, our employers, or even total strangers. Now, for George Herbert Mead, he was interested in how the individual was shaped by the interactions that they had around them, and how those interactions might shape what they would decide to do on an individual basis. You see how that kind of sounds like Mills again? Yeah, in fact, this idea of the sociological imagination was already taking root in some small way in the United States. So George Herbert Mead is somebody that we'll reintroduce in a couple of chapters, and we'll get to know a lot more about social psychology in general. Now, for my social workers, let's talk about Jane Addams, somebody that I'm sure you know who that is. Jane Addams is probably one of our earliest applied sociological thinkers, and she's so applied, in fact, she created a whole field of applied sociology, in a sense, called social work. She founds the field of social work to help work with individuals and deal with the unequal experiences that they have in our society. Now, for Jane Addams, she was particularly interested in the unequal experiences women were having at the time in society, particularly women with fewer economic resources. She found that women with fewer economic resources had a very different experience from those who had those resources. Do you see how that again sounds like C. Wright Mills? It's pretty exciting. So even in social work, her ideas are something that are still very sociological even today. By the way, if I haven't already said it, social workers, you're my heroes. Keep doing what you're doing. Let's meet one last person, and we're going to call it a day, and that would be W.E.B.DuBuois. Now, DuBois is truly one of America's first sociologists. He goes back to almost the very start, if not the very start. Now, for him, as a person of color, he experienced society in a very different way at the time. Recall, he lived from just after the Civil War right up into the 1960s. In fact, he died just shy of the Civil Rights Act being approved in 1964, but also lived through a segregated United States right up to the Brown v. Board of Education decision in 1954. Now, his experience as a PhD at Harvard was very intriguing. Because of his race, he was actually left out of many of the social arrangements, social events, and even what we call social capital or networking events that helped you connect with other people and utilize those resources. For him, he found that totally because of the color of his skin, he had a very different experience as an individual in our society compared to someone else of a different race, like me, for example, as a white person. This was something that, again, goes right back to what Mills was thinking about. What are some of those exciting things happening in our society, what we called history, that shape the individual experience? Biography. Now, at the end of the day, I hope that you can see from the very start, our field gets dedicated to this idea that we're going to absorb this society. But thinking about things like the sociological imagination, you can also see how and why sociologists are interested in what we can do to support individuals, getting all the information that they need to make informed decisions that are in their best interests. All right, that's it for this lecture. Now, our next lecture is going to turn over to focus on how we study society, a whole section on research methods, one of my favorite areas, and also one of the classes that I teach here at EKU. Now, if you have questions, you know where to find me. Send me emails. I'm happy to help. Likewise, keep up with your quizzes. Make sure you're taking care of those. If you need anything, you know where to find me. Take care.